Hey guys, tonight we're slipping on our finest pearls, ignoring prohibition, and diving headfirst into the world of 1920s New York, the place where being filthy rich meant your worst problem was deciding between lobster for breakfast or a diamond-studded toothbrush. This isn't just Great Gatsby cosplay. No, tonight we're talking about the real deal. A city bursting with jazz, speakeasies, silent scandals, and enough money sloshing around to make even your future in-laws forgive you for forgetting their birthday. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this, and promise you won't buy a pet alligator after listening. Leave a comment with your favorite jazz song, or the wildest thing you'd do if you woke up with Rockefeller's bank account. I do read them, and trust me, you can't surprise me. Now, dim those lights, set a fan to gentle speakeasy breeze, and find the softest part of your pillow. If you have silk sheets, congratulations. You're already halfway to being a 1920s trust fund baby. If not, just pretend your Target sheets are Italian satin, nobody's judging. But seriously, have you ever wondered just how ridiculous daily life got for the filthy rich back then? Like, did people really bathe in milk? How many servants does it take to brush one man's hair? Could you get caviar delivered faster than Amazon Prime? Did you ever have to bribe your way out of a speeding ticket when your car was a chauffeured Rolls-Royce? What was the etiquette for eating lobster at breakfast, fork, or just the left hand while reading telegrams about your stock portfolio? Did New York's upper crust really spend more time at parties than in their own beds? Was there a secret handshake for entering a speakeasy? Or did you just flash a diamond pinky ring? How many business meetings actually happened at 2 a.m. behind velvet curtains with a jazz band playing? And when your neighbor's pet monkey bit the mailman, who paid the bribe? Your lawyer, your butler, or just your very apologetic poodle? Congratulations. You've just woken up at 1924. You're in the penthouse suite, your pajamas cost more than a house, and your breakfast has already arrived on a silver tray. Good luck. You blink awake on 600 thread count sheets. Because in the 1920s, thread count is just another status symbol. Sunlight spills in through windows wider than most people's apartments. And the only thing louder than the city below is the symphony of servants prepping your morning routine. It takes a moment to remember where you are. Is this a hotel? A palace? No. Just another Tuesday atop the Manhattan skyline. Your bed is big enough to lose a cousin in. The mattress is so plush it feels medically inadvisable. There's a real risk of being swallowed whole, like quicksand, only with better embroidery. You stretch, or at least attempt to, and immediately discover that your silk pajamas were tailored for standing and sipping cocktails, not for full-body yoga. Welcome to luxury, where even your sleepwear has an opinion about how you should be sleeping. Somewhere in the next room, a maid tiptoes in to open the heavy velvet curtains. By hand, of course, because nobody's invented remote controls, and you wouldn't trust electricity with something this expensive anyway. Sunlight tumbles across an oriental rug, a pattern so dizzyingly intricate it could induce a small existential crisis before breakfast. You inhale the scent of fresh-cut lilies, imported from someone's greenhouse upstate, because the flower market just doesn't have the right energy. As you come to your senses, the first sounds of the day drift in from below, a distant taxi horn, the clatter of hooves from a delivery wagon. Yes, horses are still a thing, even in a city obsessed with progress. And the faint hum of the city waking up, although you wouldn't know it from your vantage point in the clouds. You're not just above it all, you're insulated from it, as if your windows are lined with an invisible barrier that keeps out anything remotely resembling ordinary life. But the real morning show is happening in your own hallway. The staff is already in mid-ballet. The butler orchestrates a hushed breakfast parade. The maid smooths out your bed with a precision that borders on spiritual and a footman stands by with a pressed newspaper so fresh it still steams from the printing press. It's a coordinated ritual, and you're both the audience and the leading act. You half expect someone to hand you a script for the day's drama. You might try to sit up, but the bed resists. Just a gentle reminder that you're not expected to exert yourself. It's the 1920s after all. And if you aren't being coddled by a small army of well-dressed professionals, are you even really living? Your feet find the thick pile of a rug that probably cost more than your first car. Not that you'd know. You have a chauffeur for that. The floor is so well heated, you briefly suspect witchcraft. As you shuffle toward the bathroom, your reflection catches you off guard. Is that really you, or is it the ghost of last night's champagne? You wonder, not for the first time, if luxury hangover is a diagnosable condition. But never fear. Your valet has already anticipated this. The porcelain sink gleams, the towels are heated, and there's a small bottle of revitalizing tonic on the marble counter. A mysterious concoction, equal parts lemon juice, seltzer, and whatever medicine men were peddling before the FDA. The view from your window is nothing short of ridiculous. The Chrysler Building glints in the distance, even though it isn't quite finished yet. And down below, Fifth Avenue writhes with early morning ambition. You can see Central Park, but only if you squint past a neighbor's new rooftop tennis court. Yes, that's a thing. No, you're not invited unless your last name is Vanderbilt. On the bedside table is a silver tray, already loaded with letters, invitations, and the sort of telegrams that only arrive when someone wants something. You promise yourself you'll read them, right after you decide whether to have your orange juice served in a glass or a hollowed-out diamond. Decisions. Decisions. The city is already in motion, but here, time stretches. You could stay in bed all morning, ordering up breakfast, paging through the headlines, or just listening to the distant rumble of the subway, safe in the knowledge that you'll never have to ride it. There's no rush. Everything important waits for you. Your only real problem is choosing which silk robe to wear while pretending to check your stock portfolio. You pause for just a second to wonder if anyone down on the street can even imagine this life. But then the maid coughs politely, the butler offers coffee on a silver tray, and the spell is broken. It's time to rise and shine, darling. The city can wait, after all. You're the one it's waiting for. And so your day as New York's most pampered insomniac truly begins. The first rule of being filthy rich in 1920s New York is simple. You do not start your morning by yourself. Before you've even fully opened your eyes, your day has already been set in motion by people who, if we're honest, know more about your own routine than you do. Somewhere between dream and reality, you hear the quiet shuffle of house slippers on polished wood, the faint tinkle of silverware, and a polite cough from someone whose job title is either gentleman's valet or human alarm clock. You're still in a sleep fog as your valet appears, perfectly pressed, and as silent as a butler in a murder mystery. He offers a choice of silk dressing gowns, because choosing between sky blue and sunrise pink is the only real hardship you'll face before noon. The pajamas come off with the help of deft hands and zero shame. In this world, privacy is as outdated as the corset. Next, it's bath time. But not just any bath. While the rest of the city is scraping by with a quick cold splash, or, heaven forbid, a shared bathroom down the hall, you're settling into a tub so enormous it could double as a jazz club's dance floor. The water is exactly the right temperature, checked thrice by your maid, and delicately scented, lilac. Maybe. Or a hint of citrus. Depending on the day's mood, you're encouraged to soak, not just wash. Because hygiene is as much about ritual as it is about removing yesterday's gin. Occasionally, a rumor circulates that some heiress somewhere bathes in milk. but you stick to perfumed bubbles. Milk is for cereal, not exfoliation. As you float, your thoughts drift. On the marble counter, a bowl of the freshest fruit, a cut glass carafe of water, filtered obviously, and a newspaper neatly ironed by a person whose sole existence may be justified by this daily act. Outside, the city honks and hammers, but inside, the only urgency is whether you want your eggs soft or hard-boiled. Your bathroom is lined with enough mirrors to satisfy a vaudeville chorus line. Every angle, every pore, every strand of perfectly coiffed hair can be examined under the gentle glow of Edison bulbs. After your soak, the pampering truly begins. Towels, thick as blankets, warmed over radiators, and draped around you like you're the world's most precious ham. Your skin is gently dried. Your hair combed with brushes, so fine the bristles probably have a resume. Next, lotions and potions, creams for the face, the hands, the elbows, and the mysterious parts of the body that only rich people worry about. Your valet offers a spritz of cologne or perfume, imported from Paris and delivered in bottles shaped like forbidden fruit. You move to the dressing room, where today's outfit awaits. It is already pressed, aired, and approved by a discreet council of servants. Shoes are shined until you can see your anxiety about the stock market reflected in them. Cufflinks, pearl earrings, silk stockings, a pocket watch. Everything is laid out in a perfect silent choreography. Dressing is not a chore but a team sport. Your maid offers advice on ties, your valet judges your posture, and someone somewhere is probably taking notes for tomorrow's improvements. Finally, before you're allowed to face the world, a discreet breakfast tray arrives. Coffee or tea, croissants so flaky you suspect they came from a Parisian bakery, and an egg so perfectly poached it could moonlight as a Fabergé. The butler hovers at a respectful distance, waiting to refill your cup or answer questions you didn't know you had. Will it rain? Is Mrs. Astor in Paris? What is jazz, really? By the time you're dressed and coiffed, you're more art installation than human being. Buffed, polished, scented, and so thoroughly cared for that the only thing you have left to do is exist, beautifully, for another day in the city that never sleeps. And let's be honest, isn't that the real luxury? Breakfast is not just the most important meal of the day. It's a full production, a performance in 3 acts. And you're both the star and the captive audience. Your terrace is a patch of paradise high above the grit and rumble of Manhattan, a place where you can pretend you own the city, or at least the chunk of skyline within arm's reach. The morning sun sparkles across the marble balustrade, and a gentle breeze tugs at linen curtains like it's in on the secret. Nobody does breakfast quite like the filthy rich. The moment you step out, there's already a table set so elegantly you worry about disturbing the symmetry. Fine bone china, sterling silver flatware, crystal glasses, and napkins so starched they could serve as emergency body armor. The floral centerpiece is a little overconfident. Honestly, lilies, roses, and something so exotic, even your butler isn't sure if it's technically legal. You can hear the city below, but up here, the horns and shouts might as well be the distant roar of the ocean. First, the parade of breakfast options begins. You're not choosing between plain or raisin oatmeal, oh no. Your chef, who once poached eggs for European royalty, presents a dizzying selection. Eggs Benedict with Canadian bacon and hollandaise that glistens like gold bullion, smoked salmon curled into delicate roses, and caviar so fresh it still has performance anxiety. There are baskets of pastries, flaky and buttery, delivered before dawn from a French bakery that only the ultra-wealthy know exists. If the croissants aren't quite up to standard, your maid will quietly slip them to the pigeons and pretend nothing happened. Fresh fruit arrives next. sliced and arranged with the geometric precision of an architect, with too much time on their hands. Oranges imported from Florida, berries from upstate, even a pineapple that crossed an ocean just to sit on your plate for 5 minutes before being gently ignored. There are pancakes so fluffy they might be sentient, and syrup poured from a cut glass decanter that looks suspiciously like it used to hold expensive perfume. Drinks are an event unto themselves. Coffee, strong enough to wake up your ancestors, is poured from a silver pot with white-gloved hands. The tea service features leaves so rare you're not entirely sure they're legal outside Buckingham Palace. Orange juice is fresh squeezed, the pulp strained by a person with the gentle touch of a violinist. And if you're in the mood for something stronger, well, it's the 1920s. A splash of champagne in your morning glass is practically a health tonic. Nobody's judging, and the staff is too polite to mention it anyway. What's a meal without a little intellectual stimulation? As you sip your drink, a stack of newspapers is placed at your elbow, each one ironed to a crispness you could never replicate. Headlines shout about the latest Wall Street scandal, last night's parties, or who got caught trying to smuggle bootleg gin into a garden club fundraiser. You skim through, searching for your own name, or, more realistically, for the names of your friends, rivals, and distant relations you pretend not to notice at the opera. Conversation, if you're joined by family or guests, is light, witty, and full of polite subtext. Did Mrs. Winthrop really wear last season's pearls to the charity gala? Is it true someone saw the Astors poodle bite the mayor? You smile, you nod, you spread jam on toast so delicate you're afraid to breathe near it. If someone brings up politics, you have a safe phrase. Isn't the weather simply divine? This deflects all responsibility, and your butler appreciates the reprieve. By the time you've finished breakfast, the city below is fully awake. But up here, in your rarefied morning bubble, you can linger as long as you like. There are no meetings to rush to, no trains to catch. You are insulated by privilege and pastries. The hardest decision is whether to have a second cup of coffee or just let the chef surprise you with a mid-morning snack. Either way, the day is off to a spectacular and utterly ridiculous start. The greatest luxury of being obscenely wealthy in 1920s New York isn't the silk sheets or the champagne for breakfast. It's the staff. Not just one or two, but a veritable cast of characters, each with a role more specific than a minor character in a Russian novel. You might think managing a household is simple when you're rich, but in truth, you're only as functional as your least caffeinated butler. Forget self-made. In this era, self-sufficiency is for people who haven't figured out how to delegate. The first person you see in the morning is probably the butler, the captain of your domestic ship. He runs the household with an iron fist, a velvet glove, and a look of mild disappointment that never entirely fades. He's the only person alive who can make good morning sound like a subtle warning. If the butler frowns at your tie, you change it. If he approves of your choice in cologne, you immediately wonder if it's too subtle. The butler knows everything before you do, from the stock market to the secret ingredient in the cook's soufflé. He is, in every sense, the CEO of your personal brand. Next comes the valet, or lady's maid if you're a woman, who is equal parts fashion consultant, personal assistant, and therapist. He's the reason you never have to remember where you left your cufflinks, and the only person who can get a wine stain out of silk with nothing but club soda and a death glare. Your valet is unflappable. He's seen you at your best and your worst, and still manages to act like you're only ever glamorous. His loyalty is legendary, though you suspect it's motivated by the hope of a Christmas bonus bigger than his annual salary. The chef is a mystery wrapped in an apron, armed with knives sharp enough to start a revolution. In the 1920s, having a French chef is the ultimate flex. but even an ambitious Italian or German cook will do if their soufflé doesn't collapse under the weight of your expectations. The chef is up before dawn, orchestrating a team of underlings, kitchen maids, scullery boys, and a pastry prodigy who will, one day, defect to a rival household over a stolen recipe for crème brûlée. The chef is temperamental, inspired, and probably the reason you've developed such strong opinions about the proper doneness of toast. The maid is the unsung hero of the household. She makes your bed, polishes the silver, and most importantly, never judges you for the pile of silk pajamas you leave on the floor. She has an uncanny knack for knowing where you put things you didn't even realize you owned. She can starch a collar sharp enough to cut glass and fold a napkin into the shape of a swan faster than you can spell prohibition. If you need something, anything, she'll have it before you've finished asking. There are usually several maids, each assigned to specific duties: laundry, dusting, or the delicate task of keeping the potted palms alive. Somewhere in the background is the footman, whose main job is to look impeccable while opening doors, serving food, and generally making you feel like royalty. The footman is young, handsome, and adept at carrying trays while pretending not to overhear family secrets. You may not know his name, but you'll recognize the look of mild panic in his eyes whenever you unexpectedly join him in the elevator. And don't forget the housekeeper, who oversees the maids, manages the laundry, and can silence a room with a single raised eyebrow. She knows every detail of your life, right down to your preferred brand of tooth powder and your irrational fear of squirrels. If something in the house goes missing, the housekeeper finds it. If the staff has a grievance, the housekeeper fixes it. Her authority is second only to the butler, and some days you're not entirely sure who's really in charge. All told, your household staff is a machine made of gossip, loyalty, and enough elbow grease to keep Fifth Avenue gleaming. They are invisible when you want privacy, ever present when you need help, and the real reason your life works at all. In the world of the 1920s rich, you're only as powerful as the people quietly making your toast. And that, truly, is living in style. The clock strikes 9, and somewhere in New York, a flapper zips a dress and a banker polishes a shoe. But in your penthouse, getting dressed is not a matter of simply putting on clothes. It's a competitive event, a team effort, and, at times, an existential struggle with buttons, starch, and society's ever-changing whims. In the 1920s, fashion is power, and you wield it like a wealthy wizard with an enchanted wardrobe and a personal staff of fairy godmothers. You start in the dressing room, which is larger than the average city apartment. One entire wall is just for shoes, lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. Patent leather, suede, Italian imports, shoes for dancing, shoes for brunch, shoes for when you expect to be seen in the society column. Above them, hats of every imaginable shape perch on velvet stands, cloches, fedoras, wide-brimmed marvels festooned with ribbons and feathers, each chosen according to a strict social algorithm known only to your lady's maid. And, perhaps, the ghost of Coco Chanel. Today's weather matters, but not as much as the calendar of appearances, a document more sacred than the US Constitution, and updated hourly by your secretary. Are you visiting Mrs. Winthrop for luncheon? You'll need the blue suit, French cuffs, and the tie that says "I'm important," but not as important as your pearls. Afternoon walk in Central Park? That's the tweed ensemble with matching gloves, never brown in May. Dinner at the plaza? Out comes the tuxedo, pressed until the lapels have a spiritual sheen, and shoes buffed by someone who treats leather like a religious relic. Dressing for the 1920s elite is not a solo activity. Your valet, or lady's maid if you're a woman, presides over the proceedings with military precision. He lays out 3, sometimes 4. Entire outfits on a fainting couch, each option more extravagant than the last. Your job is to point, sigh, and try to remember which dinner jacket matches the new cufflinks gifted by your distant cousin who now lives in Paris and only writes in verse. First come the layers. Undergarments of imported silk or fine cotton, so soft you suspect a crime was committed against 1,000 caterpillars. Next, the shirt, starched until it resists folding, with cuffs that could, in an emergency, double as a small serving tray. Your arms are maneuvered through sleeves by expert hands, and, when you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, you realize you look like an Edwardian dandy who wandered into the jazz age and decided to stay for the cocktails. Buttons, laces, and cufflinks follow. Each is a challenge. Some are so complicated you're convinced the designer hated humanity. There's the collar stud that escapes every morning, and the tie that requires an advanced degree in geometry to get right. For women, the ritual is even more elaborate. Slips, stockings, corsets, now blessedly looser than in decades past, followed by a flurry of chiffon, beads, and shimmering fabrics that trail behind you like a comet. Hair is waved, pinned, and sprayed into a style that will, hopefully, last through the first course at dinner. Accessories are where the real fun and stress begins. You must choose between pearl earrings or diamond drops, a pocket square folded just so, a wristwatch that signals modernity, or a vintage one that whispers of old money. Gloves are non-negotiable, as is a spritz of imported perfume or cologne, so intoxicating it could be banned under prohibition. By the end of this transformation, you're breathless, not from exertion, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. You're dressed not just to impress, but to declare your place in the world. In the 1920s, fashion is a kind of armor. You might be anxious, bored, or plotting your next big investment, but at least you'll do it looking like you stepped out of a magazine. After all, you don't just get dressed, you prepare for battle. And in New York high society, that's the only way to win. You might think that nothing could top the decadence of breakfast on the terrace or the performance art of getting dressed. But in the upper echelons of 1920s New York, there is a ritual even more vital to the filthy rich: the morning paper review. It's not just reading the news, it's a full-contact social sport, an elaborate dance of information, anxiety, and most importantly, gossip. If breakfast fuels the body, then gossip over the morning papers is pure oxygen for the soul of high society. The day's news arrives not as a jumbled heap, but as a carefully curated stack. Each paper ironed and folded by a footman who treats journalism like sacred scripture. The New York Times, the Tribune, the Sun, and, for the truly daring, a tabloid or two. Every headline is a potential landmine or a launch pad for your next conversational gambit. Your butler places the papers just so, beside your plate, and you take a moment to admire the neatness before digging in with the hungry eyes of a lion-stalking scandal. You don't actually read everything, of course. Nobody does. You scan, you skim, and you linger on the society columns, where the real action happens. There, in tiny, elegant print, are the names of your friends, enemies, and mysterious acquaintances. Who attended which gala? Who was seen dining discreetly with whom? Did the Astor's new Italian chef really throw a saucepan at the sous chef, or is that just clever code for the pasta was too spicy? Every detail is potential ammunition, and every omission is just as telling. Sometimes, you find yourself squinting at a paragraph, reading between the lines for coded messages. A mention of a late-night business meeting at the Stork Club? Translation: someone was escorted out the back by a doorman, and if they're lucky, still has their dignity and their pearls. A new charity announced by Mrs. Rutherford. Clearly, She's atoning for the disaster at last month's art auction when her husband bid on a sculpture that turned out to be a cleverly disguised umbrella stand. There's an art to the way you absorb and deploy this information. If you're not careful, you might get caught reacting to a piece of gossip you shouldn't technically know, so you master the skill of the subtle eyebrow raise, the non-committal, "Isn't that interesting?" and the expertly timed sip of coffee. Your household staff, meanwhile, is silently engaged in their own information exchange. The butler shares a glance with the housekeeper. The maid stifles a laugh at the headline about the mayor's poodle. Even the chef pretends to ignore the rumor about a new French restaurant stealing all the good pastry apprentices. If you're joined by family or a guest, the paper review becomes a round table. Everyone claims to read for business or cultural events, but by the third page it's open season on the scandal of the day. Your spouse pretends not to notice the item about a certain socialite's midnight swim in the plaza fountain, while your cousin reads the financial page upside down and mutters darkly about market volatility. For the children, the comics page is a battleground, with sibling rivalries as fierce as any Wall Street feud. Occasionally, you receive news of yourself, a line about your attendance at a gala, or a mysterious mention of your notable support for the arts, which you suspect is code for that time you fell asleep during a modernist ballet. It's always a relief not to see your name in a headline, unless, of course, the headline involves charity, fashion, or a witty remark made in the presence of someone important. You keep a mental scorecard. Today, you're up 3 points. Tomorrow, who knows? By the time you finish with the papers, you're fully briefed on the day's scandals, schemes, and social minefields. You fold the news away, thank the staff, and rise from the table armed and ready for the battles ahead. After all, in the Roaring Twenties, knowledge is power, but gossip is everything. For the truly wealthy New Yorker of the 1920s, nothing announces your status to the world quite like your car, or, more accurately, your fleet of cars, since owning just one would be as unthinkable as eating only a single course at dinner. The automobile isn't just a method of transportation. It's a rolling monument to your privilege, a status symbol on wheels, and, most importantly, a mobile stage for being seen. If fashion is your armor, then the luxury car is your chariot. Your morning begins with a visit to the garage, though garage hardly does justice to the marble-floored, chandelier-lit carriage house that houses your collection. Inside, a small team polishes each gleaming fender and shines every bit of chrome until it can blind a passing pigeon. There are no muddy footprints here, just a faint scent of leather, gasoline, and, inevitably, money. The staff is as particular about the cars as they are about the silverware, and the head chauffeur is a master mechanic, a discreet confidant, and occasionally a therapist with a wrench. You, of course, do not drive yourself. That's what the chauffeur is for. He appears every morning in a uniform so crisp it could double as a murder weapon, cap perfectly straight, gloves dazzlingly white. His job is to get you anywhere in the city without your feet touching a filthy sidewalk, and to do so with the quiet grace of a cat burglar. The car, a Packard, a Duesenberg, or maybe a brand new Rolls-Royce, purrs at the curb. Its engine so smooth you barely feel a thing, except the gentle reminder that you are, at all times, above it all. Getting into the car is a ritual. The chauffeur opens the door for you, of course, and you slide onto plush seats softer than your conscience after 3 martinis. The interior is a cocoon of comfort. Walnut paneling, lamb's wool rugs, and, if you're particularly fashionable, a telephone or a radio, still a novelty in the jazz age. You never, ever look over your shoulder while parking. Parking is for people who pay retail. Every ride is an opportunity for display. So you keep the windows just low enough to let the world glimpse your elegance, but not so low as to let in the city's unfiltered air. As the car glides through the city streets, You are both spectator and spectacle, watching the city unfurl outside while the city watches you glide by. If the traffic snarls, you simply sit back and enjoy the fact that you aren't the one sweating behind the wheel. If the weather is bad, all the better. You'll arrive without a single raindrop on your hat, while lesser mortals drip their way into offices and shops. Your chauffeur is more than a driver. He's a fixer of problems, a keeper of secrets, and sometimes an accomplice in your best stories. He knows the fastest routes, the best shortcuts, and which alleyways to avoid when you're sneaking off to a less than legal speakeasy. He always remembers where you left your gloves, which umbrella is yours, and how to make the car's horn sound friendly instead of menacing. If you're running late, he weaves through traffic with the precision of a surgeon. If you want to be seen, he slows down outside the plaza just enough for the photographers to get your good side. Sometimes, you take a spin upstate or out to Long Island, where the roads are wider and the air a little less crowded with ambition. You lean back, watch the world roll by, and wonder if life can get any easier. Spoiler: it can. Sometimes, you switch cars midday, because nothing says I've arrived like arriving twice in two different vehicles. For the rich of 1920s New York, the car isn't just transport. It's an extension of your reputation. The city might run on subway tunnels and shoe leather, but you glide above it all, engine humming and chauffeur at the helm, perfectly insulated from the chaos outside. In a world obsessed with appearances, even your commute is a performance. And in this show, you're always in the front seat, even if you never ever touch the steering wheel. For the 1920s, New York elite, shopping is not a necessity, it's a ceremony. Fifth Avenue is your cathedral, and you approach it with the reverence of a pilgrim who expects every window display to bow in their presence. Forget popping out for just one thing. Shopping, at this level, is a marathon of taste, stamina, and carefully staged drama, complete with costume changes and a supporting cast of salespeople whose sole purpose is to convince you that yes, you really do need a fourth pair of gloves trimmed with imported ermine. The day's expedition begins with your chauffeur escorting you from your front door to the curb, where a line of shops waits like contestants on a particularly high-stakes dating show. The sidewalk is already abuzz with society's finest, all of them trying to look like they simply wandered out for some fresh air. Your first stop is the milliner, because hats in this decade are less about sun protection and more about social survival. You perch on a velvet chair while assistants flit about, balancing cloches and wide brims on your head, offering muted encouragements and discreetly judging the shape of your ears. If you don't leave with something feathered and absurdly tilted, you haven't done Fifth Avenue right. Next up, the boutiques. Each door you step through is opened by a doorman who's mastered the art of the respectful nod. Inside, the air smells like perfume, hope, and very expensive leather. Racks are lined with dresses so delicate they look like they'd melt in the rain, and evening gowns that would scandalize your grandmother. Salesladies address you by name, because knowing your preferences is both art and survival. Would Madam like to see the latest Parisian styles? Of course you would, even if you're just browsing. You leave a trail of polite chaos behind you, heaps of silk, abandoned gloves, and the whispered memory of your critique. A bit too much rhinestone, darling. Onward, ever onward, to the shoe salon. If Cinderella had visited Saks, she'd never have made it home. There are rows of tiny, delicate shoes, each one more impractical than the last. You test a dozen pairs, examining heels, clasps, and linings, because you're not buying footwear. You're making a statement about your ability to balance both literally and socially. The salesman slips each shoe on your foot with the gravity of a man performing open-heart surgery. You nod, he beams, and somewhere in the back, someone wraps a pear in tissue so soft it feels like a crime to step on it. Of course, shopping isn't just for the ladies. Gentlemen have their own shrines, bespoke tailors, barbers, and tobacco shops so exclusive they have passwords instead of hours. A new suit isn't just measured, it's sculpted to your exacting standards. You stand, arms outstretched, while the tailor circles you like a hawk, pinning, tucking, and frowning in concentration. There's a brief, sacred silence as he presents a swatch of cashmere so luxurious you briefly consider cancelling your evening plans just to sit and pet your new lapels. No trip down Fifth Avenue would be complete without a visit to the jeweler. The windows glitter with diamonds, sapphires, and enough pearls to sink a small yacht. The staff knows you well enough to offer the good stuff up front. None of this locked case nonsense for someone of your means. You debate between two brooches, agonizing not over the price but over which will generate the most envy at your next gala. Shopping at this level is exhausting in the way only true luxury can be. You pause for a late morning tea, letting the sound of clinking china mingle with the faint tap of credit being extended. The bags pile up, your chauffeur waits, and you have the slightly smug glow of someone who knows the world is, if only for the morning, yours to command. As you glide home, arms full and wallet lighter, you know you've done more than just acquire goods. You've performed, you've competed, you've triumphed. Fifth Avenue may never sleep, but for the rich, it always rolls out a red carpet. Shopping isn't shopping. It's proof you exist, beautifully, extravagantly, and just a little more fabulously than everyone else. There's an unwritten rule in 1920s New York high society. You do not simply text a friend to say you're in the area. You call. Calling on friends is a ceremonial art, part pop-in, part performance, and a very large part about showing off your new hat. Forget casual, forget spontaneous. Every social visit is meticulously planned, carefully orchestrated, and tinged with just enough anxiety to keep everyone's butlers on edge. The morning's mail brings a stack of calling cards and invitations, some genuine, some an elaborate game of social chess. The cards themselves are marvels. Thick, creamy stock, embossed with impossible names and even more impossible family crests. Responding is a tactical move. Accept too quickly and you seem desperate. Wait too long and you risk being blackballed from the next luncheon. Once you decide to pay a call, the real preparations begin. First, the outfit. What you wear for a society visit says everything about you. Are you friendly with your hosts? Or are you simply here to maintain a delicate truce? Choose the wrong color, and you might find yourself seated next to the wrong cousin 3 weeks in a row. Your valet or lady's maid hovers nearby, offering advice. The lavender is subtle, but the green makes a statement. You settle for something in between, hoping it will communicate, I'm approachable, but please don't ask me about prohibition. Next, the journey. The chauffeur is already waiting. The car polished to a mirror shine. Your housekeeper discreetly checks that you remembered the appropriate hostess gift. Flowers, a book, or perhaps a rare tin of imported biscuits, something that whispers thoughtful rather than shouts trying too hard. The drive itself is a test of poise. You must arrive neither too early, desperate, nor too late, arrogant. 5 minutes after the hour is the golden rule. Unless you wish to appear French, in which case you simply ignore clocks altogether. Upon arrival, you're greeted not by your friend, but by their butler, who has mastered the subtle art of judging your shoes while ushering you into the drawing room. The first 5 minutes are always a dance of small talk. Admiring a new painting, inquiring after the health of a dog, or making safe remarks about the weather. It's only after tea is served, or perhaps a glass of sherry if your host is feeling rebellious, that the real visit begins. The drawing room is a theatre, each guest an actor, each conversation a scene. There are the regulars, the friend who always knows the latest gossip, the cousin who is quietly angling for a marriage proposal, the dowager aunt whose opinions are as sharp as her lapels. Polite conversation flows like cream in coffee, smooth, frothy, and likely to leave a stain if you're not careful. You are here to listen, to drop witty remarks, and to gently gather intelligence. If someone says, "Did you hear about the Westchester Ball?" you nod knowingly, even if you have no idea what they're talking about. If a guest compliments your brooch, you demur, "Oh, this old thing?" while making a mental note of who's watching. Society visits are more than networking, they're auditions. Every glance is a callback, every compliment a screen test for the next social gathering. At least one guest will feign a sudden cough or announce a headache, conveniently excusing themselves to make an early escape and be the subject of next week's speculation. Sometimes you're tempted to join them, but the promise of fresh gossip or a particularly good eclair keeps you firmly in place. Eventually, as the conversation wanes and the hostess's smile grows slightly fixed, it's time to go. You stand, exchange polite farewells, and promise to host soon. You won't, but it's the thought that counts. Your chauffeur spirits you away, leaving only the faintest trace of your perfume on the damask. And, hopefully, a ripple in the social pond that lasts until the next round of visits. In the world of the 1920s elite, calling on friends is never just about friendship. It's about alliances, appearances, and keeping your name, preferably spelled correctly, in the right column of tomorrow's paper. And as you're driven home, you realize the visit has gone well if you've left with a new secret, a new admirer, and, best of all, no new enemies. It's 3 o'clock, and in the rarefied world of New York's upper crust, this means only one thing: tea. Afternoon tea is not just a break between lunch and dinner, it's a social minefield. A ritual of calculated glances and sugar-dusted subterfuge, where pastries are nibbled delicately and reputations are devoured whole. If you've survived breakfast, fashion, shopping, and the gauntlet of your own staff, congratulations. Now you must face the true test of high society, keeping your dignity intact while balancing a petite four and a polite threat. The parlor is ready, of course. Sunlight slants through floor-to-ceiling windows, filtered by lace curtains so clean they could double as X-ray film. Silver trays gleam, stacked with teacups so thin you're afraid to grip them too tightly, lest the handle shatter and reveal your lack of breeding. The furniture is arranged with military precision. Not too close, that would be familiar. Not too far, that would be snobbish. And always angled for maximum eavesdropping potential. The flowers are fresh, the napkins folded like origami swans, and a discreet trio of staff hovers in the background, ready to rescue you from a jam emergency or a social faux pas. Guests arrive in a trickle, never all at once, never on time. There's an art to the entrance. Some sweep in, trailing perfume and gossip. Others slip in quietly, eyes sharp, ears sharper. Names are exchanged, cheeks are kissed. Twice, or not at all, depending on the mood in Paris. And the conversation begins with safe topics. The weather, the latest concert, a passing reference to the stock market. Such a wild beast, isn't it, darling? But everyone knows that small talk is merely the prelude. The real action simmers beneath the surface. The tea itself is a performance. The butler presents a silver service, as if unveiling crown jewels. Earl Grey, Darjeeling, or perhaps a smoky Russian caravan blend, if you want to hint at a rebellious streak. The cups are filled with steady hands and measured grace. Sugar is offered, 1 cube or 2, lemon perhaps. Milk is poured with the seriousness of a confession. If you ask for cream, you're quietly judged by every eye in the room, but nobody says a word. That's what social notes are for later. Then come the treats. Scones with clotted cream, cucumber sandwiches with the crusts surgically removed, eclairs so glossy you can check your reflection in the chocolate. Each bite is consumed with dainty precision because nothing ruins a reputation faster than a stray crumb. There are cakes, petite fours, and pastries stacked in tiers, each one a tiny, edible status symbol. If you find a raspberry tart missing, it's not an accident, it's a declaration of social warfare. As everyone settles, the real conversations begin. Soft voices, arched eyebrows, questions posed with the gentlest of daggers. Did you hear about the Vanderbilt's new decorator? They say he's French, but his mustache is suspiciously local. Was that Mrs. Sinclair leaving the plaza so late last night? Surely not alone? Polite laughter ripples, but you catch the glint of rivalry in every smile. Secrets are exchanged as casually as spoons. Alliances are forged and broken with a nod, and at least one guest is already plotting a rival event. If you're wise, you add only as much to the conversation as you're willing to see in tomorrow's paper. Every story, every compliment, is a chess move. The best players never raise their voices, never spill their tea, and never, under any circumstances, lose track of who owes whom a favor. For newcomers, the experience is dizzying. For veterans, it's as invigorating as champagne, bubbly, dangerous, and occasionally hard to swallow. When the clock strikes 4, the tea party dissolves as elegantly as it began. Guests depart, exchanging final air kisses and coded goodbyes. The parlor empties. The staff whisks away the evidence, and you're left with a faint scent of bergamot, a lingering sense of accomplishment, and the comforting knowledge that in New York's high society, nothing is more dangerous or delicious than a well-brewed cup of tea. Luncheon in 1920s New York is not merely a meal, it's a multi-act play. A midday spectacle where the city's wealthiest gather to perform, compete, and occasionally to eat. If breakfast on the terrace is about indulgence and afternoon tea is about intrigue, luncheon is about power, who you know, who you're seen with, and who can tell the best story without spilling consommé down their tie. You start by receiving your invitation, often delivered with flowers or an embossed card promising a small, informal gathering. This is a lie. Luncheon is never informal. It is a meticulously choreographed affair, a chance to cement alliances, air grievances, and show off your latest Parisian shoes. There's a menu, never too heavy. No one wants a nap attack before bridge, but never so light as to seem stingy. The guest list is curated with surgical precision. A countess here, a financier there, a Broadway starlet for sparkle, and a reliable bore or two to make everyone else look more interesting by comparison. Before you leave, you consult your staff. Your valet ensures your outfit says, "I could attend a board meeting or a fox hunt and look better than you at either." Gloves, hat, tie or pearls, each chosen to send a signal, though you're never quite sure what that signal is. A quick word with the chauffeur. Please drive past the park, but avoid Fifth Avenue. I simply can't be late behind a delivery van. Your arrival is calculated to be memorable but never desperate. A fashionably late entrance is currency, but too late, and you risk being the punchline at dessert. The luncheon itself is hosted in a dining room designed to impress. Gleaming silver, bone china, and crystal goblets catch the light, as if each place setting has its own agent. The centerpiece may be flowers, fruit, or occasionally, something avant-garde like an ice sculpture of Neptune, which will slowly melt, dripping a tiny existential crisis onto the tablecloth. Place cards are subtle weapons. Being seated next to the host signals you're in. Being exiled to the far end means you have some social climbing left to do. The meal begins with polite restraint. Consommé, or a delicate salad, always presented by a battalion of waiters moving in synchronized silence. The conversation is equally measured, opening with the weather, a nod to last night's opera, or a diplomatic inquiry into someone's new canary. Soon, though, the volume rises, laughter echoes, anecdotes fly, and the real competition begins. Luncheon is a stage for stories, and everyone's auditioning for the lead. Tales of summer in Newport, adventures in Paris, and the most dreadful mix-up at customs are swapped with a mix of humility and one-upmanship. As the main course arrives, perhaps roast chicken with wild rice, or lobster for the ambitious, the knives come out, figuratively usually. Subtle jabs are made about rival hostesses, investments gone awry, or the unfortunate colour of Mrs. Van Allen's new motor car. If someone leaves the table to take a call, you know it's either scandal or a strategic retreat. The wine flows, and so does the gossip, all within a lattice of manners that can seem impenetrable to outsiders. Dessert is the denouement: lemon tart, macaron, petit fours, or a flambé that threatens to ignite more than just conversation. It's the sweet note before the curtain drops, a final chance to impress, to forgive, or to plant the seeds of next week's rumours. By the time coffee is served, allegiances have shifted, plots have thickened, and reputations have either survived or, in rare cases, soared. When you rise from the table, it's with the practiced poise of someone who knows they've played their part. Luncheon isn't just about eating, it's about staking your claim in the never-ending, always absurd theatre of high society. And as you say your goodbyes and step back into the city's sunlight, you know you've survived another act. Possibly hungry, but never, ever unnoticed. Among the glittering rituals of 1920s New York, the charity gala stands alone as both a show of generosity and a subtle duel of social standing. For the rich, philanthropy is not so much about saving the world as it is about saving face publicly. Each event is an opportunity to polish your halo while sharpening your social claws, all under the pretense of raising money for orphans, hospitals, or occasionally the rescue of rare and emotionally fragile peacocks. Preparation for a gala starts weeks in advance. You can't simply turn up with last season's pearls or, heaven forbid, the same gown you wore to the Astor's spring ball. Your dress or tuxedo is custom-made, fitted and fussed over by at least 3 people who treat silk like a sacred text. Your jewelry is selected for maximum shimmer under electric lights, and your shoes are shined until you can see your conscience reflected in them, however faintly. The invitations themselves are works of art. Thick cardstock, gold leaf, and calligraphy, so elaborate that deciphering the address is an exercise in cryptology. RSVPs are strategic, never the first to accept, desperate, never the last, disinterested. You want to be visible, but not too eager. Everyone knows the real guest list is decided by gossip and grudges as much as by wealth. When the night arrives, you're delivered by your chauffeur to the entrance of the plaza or the Waldorf, where reporters and photographers are already gathering like hungry cats. You make your entrance, slow, poised, rehearsed, down a staircase so grand it has witnessed more scandals than most courthouses. You exchange air kisses, shake gloved hands, and smile for flashbulbs, secretly wondering if your rival's tiara is borrowed or bought. Inside, the ballroom is a spectacle, Flowers, candles, and an orchestra playing something just slow enough to discourage anyone from actually dancing until after dinner. The tables are set for hundreds, each with name cards that reveal the evening's power dynamics. The closer to the dais, the more important you are. Everyone pretends not to notice, but you can sense the envy radiating from the far corners of the room. Dinner is an extravagant affair, as much about networking as about nourishment. Between courses of poached salmon, filet mignon, and desserts shaped like miniature cathedrals, the real business of the evening takes place. Silent auctions are anything but. Bidding wars over diamond brooches and oil paintings erupt, each paddle raised as a subtle flex. Large checks are written with a flourish, ensuring everyone can see exactly how generous you're being. Sometimes the charity's cause is mentioned in a brief speech, but more often, the attention is on who wore what and which publisher's wife had one too many glasses of champagne. The entertainment is as lavish as the guest list. Perhaps a rising opera singer, a contortionist, or a vaudeville act that's just risque enough to be memorable but not enough to scandalize the vicar's wife. In between acts, you circulate, shaking hands, and dropping carefully crafted compliments, knowing every word may end up in tomorrow's society column. There is, inevitably, a sense of competition. Who will be recognized as the evening's most generous patron? Who will leave early, feigning illness to attend a better party? Whose donation will make the society pages? And whose will be quietly forgotten? You smile through it all, balancing a glass of champagne and a polite laugh, keeping one eye on your rivals and another on the photographer. When the gala winds down, you collect your gift bag, perfume, truffles, perhaps a monogrammed fountain pen, and glide home, exhausted but satisfied. The city's needy may benefit, but the biggest winners are always those who manage to sparkle the brightest under the ballroom's golden lights. Because in the end, a charity gala in 1920s New York is about far more than giving. It's about being seen, remembered, and, if possible, envied. The good deed is just the ticket in. The real prize is leaving with your reputation, halo and all, intact and maybe just a little shinier than when you arrived. If there is one institution in 1920s New York that separates the filthy rich from the merely affluent, it is the private club. These are not your neighborhood watering holes. These are palatial sanctuaries, tucked behind unmarked doors, whose names are spoken with reverence and sometimes a little fear. The Knickerbocker, the Union Club, the Colony, the Lotus. All names that mean little to outsiders but everything to those lucky, or connected, or rich, or devious, enough to enter. If Fifth Avenue is where you shop to be seen, a private club is where you vanish, only to reappear weeks later with new alliances and just possibly the inside scoop on who's about to lose their shirt on Wall Street. Membership, of course, is by invitation only. You don't apply so much as get whispered about in the right corridors. Perhaps after your uncle saves a senator's cat, or your mother's bridge partner decides you're finally presentable, the club's committee convenes in wood-panelled secrecy to debate your worthiness, sifting through rumours, references, and that unfortunate episode with the lobster at last summer's clam bake. It is said that some applications are decided based on which brand of cufflinks you wear, or whether your grandfather fought on the correct side of a forgotten railroad feud. Once inside, you're greeted by an atmosphere thick with cigar smoke and history, walls aligned with oil paintings of stern men in starched collars, staring down as if daring you to spill a drink. The floors creak just so. The leather armchairs sigh under the weight of 1,000 secrets, and the lighting is set permanently to midnight plot. Your name is never shouted, only murmured in corners. Staff move like shadows, appearing with your preferred drink before you've even requested it, because naturally, they remember everything. Here, Business is conducted in whispers over scotch. Fortunes are made and unmade in a single hand of poker. And reputations are toasted and quietly destroyed. The rules are as strict as any monasteries, with a dress code enforced more rigorously than prohibition. Hats off, jackets on, and never, ever speak of what you hear within these walls. There are rumours, always rumours, of back rooms where real deals are struck, passwords exchanged, and where a misplaced word can earn you exile from polite society. Some say there's a secret passage to the hotel next door, for those whose evenings get complicated. For the ladies, there are their own sanctuaries, powder rooms as opulent as Versailles, or entire women's clubs, filled with the city's grand dames and upstart socialites. Here, alliances are built over bridge and gossip. Marriages are arranged, and the fate of next month's charity gala is decided between sips of Darjeeling. The politics are just as cutthroat as anything happening in the billiard room, only with more lace and less visible weaponry. Occasionally, you are invited to the club's special events, masked balls, midnight banquets, or the annual election of officers, a process that makes the US Congress look positively efficient. There are wine tastings, lectures on the future of aviation, or for the truly adventurous clandestine poker nights that run until dawn. Members leave at odd hours, sometimes having gained a fortune, sometimes simply relieved they survived another evening without scandal. But perhaps the greatest draw of all is the sense of belonging. In a city that never stops watching, here you can finally let your guard down, at least as far as your rivals will allow. Your club is your fortress, your confessional, your battlefield. And though the rest of the world may only catch glimpses through the cracks, inside those forbidden doors, you are part of a world within a world. Membership is for life, or until your next scandal, whichever comes first. So the next time you stroll past an unmarked door in Midtown and wonder what secrets lie within, remember, in the Roaring Twenties, the real action always happens behind closed doors. And if you ever make it inside, don't forget, the first rule of the club is you never talk about the club, especially not to anyone who reads the society pages. For the average New Yorker, working from home in the 1920s means mending a hem or writing a letter on the kitchen table. For you, it means an entire room, often two, dedicated to the fine art of not actually working, but making it look like you're on the verge of revolutionizing finance, railroads, or, on rare occasion, the concept of brunch. The home office of the truly rich is less about productivity and more about theatre. A carefully curated backdrop of mahogany, brass, and high-stakes paperwork designed to dazzle anyone who steps inside. The centerpiece of your home office is always the desk. Not just any desk, of course. Yours is a fortress of wood and leather, imported from London or Paris, carved with lions, griffins, or if you're especially ostentatious, your own initials. On the desk is a mountain of correspondence, telegrams, handwritten letters, ledgers thick enough to stun an ox, and a stack of bills that you will never personally pay. There's a green glass banker's lamp, the kind that looks like it could double as a murder weapon in a whodunit, and several gold pens, some of which actually work. You settle in each morning, a vision of determination in a monogrammed robe or tailored suit, depending on whether you plan to see anyone or just impress yourself. The telephone rings, one of the new rotary models, gleaming like a prop from a science fiction story. If you're feeling dramatic, you answer it yourself. More often, your secretary picks up, scribbling notes in shorthand so mysterious even cryptographers would give up. Managing your money is a multi-act farce. Sure, you have a portfolio, but it's less about tracking expenses and more about reading reports from banks, brokers, and that one cousin who keeps trying to sell you stock in electrified hosiery. You listen to the radio for stock updates, even though you don't fully trust the newscaster's accent. Occasionally, you sign something with a flourish, pretending to understand the details, while your financial advisor waits outside the door, ready to gently steer you away from ruin. There are moments of genuine decision-making. Should you invest in that upstart automobile company? Buy another brownstone, just in case you run out of places to store your hats? Donate to a hospital? Or sponsor the world's most pointless yacht race? Your secretary, the true brains of the operation, organizes meetings, pays bills, and delicately intercepts family members who show up hoping to discuss a small loan. If the numbers look especially confusing, you consider calling your lawyer. But remember, you haven't paid last month's retainer. No matter. Money, like the city's traffic, always finds a way to move. The office is also a sanctuary, a place to retreat when the noise of high society grows too loud, or when the prospect of another charity gala has you considering faking a fever. Here, you can brood, dream, or compose a sharply worded letter to the editor about the lack of decent French butter in New York. Sometimes you even attempt to write your memoirs, though after 3 pages, you usually get distracted by a delivery of rare cigars or the sound of jazz drifting in from the next room. But even in your sanctuary, work finds you. There's always someone who needs a reference, a rival whose financial missteps are the talk of the club, or a scandal that requires damage control before the next morning's paper hits the doorstep. The office becomes a war room. Charts pinned to the wall, phone lines humming, telegrams flying back and forth like carrier pigeons on espresso. You find yourself making grand pronouncements. Sell. Buy. Why are we still supporting Cousin Harold's typewriter repair shop, while your staff dutifully records your every word and later implements whichever ones won't end in bankruptcy? At the end of the day, you close the ledger, sign the last check, and recline in your chair, satisfied. Did you accomplish anything? Who knows? But the desk looks impressive. The wastebasket is satisfyingly full, and, most importantly, anyone peeking in would swear you're the next Rockefeller in the making. In the 1920s, managing wealth is equal parts performance and privilege. And, for the right family, the most entertaining job you'll never actually have to do. If you thought dressing once a day was enough, welcome to the world of 1920s New York's elite, where a single outfit is as unthinkable as skipping your evening cocktail. The sun is barely setting, and yet your staff is already preparing for your next transformation. A metamorphosis from daytime dignitary to nighttime luminary. In this high society, changing clothes isn't just a necessity. It's a performance, a ritual, a declaration that you belong not only to the world of business and luncheons, but to the glittering twilight that is New York after dark. Your evening starts hours before the actual event. You find yourself in your dressing room, a sanctum lined with mirrors, wardrobes, and hopeful assistants, staring at an array of gowns and tuxedos that could clothe a small, well-to-do town. There are fabrics that shimmer like the city lights, silks that slither over your skin, and velvets as soft as the promises made in last night's love letters. Your valet or lady's maid, already plotting tomorrow's laundry strategy, lays out options as if preparing for a royal coronation. The decision is not simple. For women, it's a ballet of possibilities. Beaded flapper dresses that move with every note of the Charleston Empire, waist gowns that promise elegance, or daring new styles with plunging backs and scandalously low necklines. Your maid helps you wiggle into whichever ensemble is just daring enough, carefully securing every hook and snap. Gloves are selected, elbow length for maximum drama, or something shorter if you plan on scandalizing your elders. Shoes are chosen based on the floor at the night's destination, slick marble, plush carpet. One must always be prepared to either glide or grip. For men, The ritual is no less dramatic. The evening tuxedo emerges from its protective case, freshly pressed and so sharply tailored you could use it to slice a lemon. Shirt studs and cufflinks are chosen not only for shine but for what they whisper. Serious if you're escorting a dignitary. Playful if the evening may include a hidden speakeasy. Your valet assists with the bow tie, a task that, if done incorrectly, could set off a citywide panic among society's perfectionists. Patent leather shoes are buffed until your reflection looks more composed than you feel. Jewelry is next, of course, a symphony of diamonds, sapphires and pearls, all designed to catch the candlelight or the flashbulbs of the ever-present photographers. You pause to select a fragrance, something mysterious and unforgettable, a scent that lingers in doorways and on the memories of those you pass. Your hair is arranged in the latest style. Marcel waves for the women, slicked and precise for the men. Each strand coaxed into submission with creams and combs. While you prepare, your staff runs interference. The butler ensures your invitation is at hand. Your opera glasses are packed, and your taxi, or, more likely, your chauffeured limousine, waits below. A final check in the mirror, a dab of powder, and a last glance at the invitation, just to make sure you're arriving at the right address this time. In the 1920s, nothing ruins a night quite like showing up to the wrong gala in the right dress. The ritual of evening wear is not about comfort. It's about transformation. You are donning your armor for the most glamorous battlefield imaginable. A night in New York where every glance matters and every detail can tip the scales of reputation. Walking out the door, you feel taller, braver, and, if the shoes fit, ready for anything the city can throw at you. As you descend to the waiting car, city lights flicker to life below. The doorman tips his hat, the driver opens the door, and you slip into the velvet darkness, equal parts anticipation and nerves. Tonight, you are not just another New Yorker. You are a beacon, a jewel, a star in the endless constellation of the city's richest, boldest dreamers. And all it took was 3 hours, 7 staff members, and a willingness to let your toes go numb for the sake of style. In the world of the 1920s elite, you don't just dress up, you rise up. As dusk paints the skyline in gold and violet, your calendar declares it's time for another dinner party. A sacred ritual for New York's rich and restless in the 1920s. In this world, dinner is never just a meal, it's an epic, a test of stamina, a multi-course performance with as much drama as a Broadway opening night, and often the same cast of characters. You dress not just to impress, but to compete. And you arrive knowing the greatest risks are not just spilled wine, but social disaster. The setting is always breathtaking. Long dining tables glow under candlelight or glittering chandeliers, set with china so thin you're afraid to breathe near it and silver polished until it could start a fire on a sunny day. Each place setting is an intricate puzzle of forks, knives, spoons, and mysterious implements you'll pretend to recognize. Place cards assign you next to a financier, a countess, or perhaps that playwright whose last show you publicly called ambitious. There's no assigned seating in the trenches. Dinner begins with champagne and introductions. If the host is really showing off, there may be a string quartet hidden behind the ferns. Hors d'oeuvres are passed, tiny towers of crab, caviar on toast, or canapes so delicate you feel bad eating them, but you do anyway. Laughter floats around the room in bubbles, and everyone leans in, eager for the next juicy anecdote or whispered secret. Then comes the meal itself, a procession of flavors and fortunes. The courses parade in. Oysters on the half shell, consommé so clear it reflects the chandelier, roast meats with sauces imported from France, and vegetables arranged like art. The chef, who hasn't slept since Tuesday, works unseen in the kitchen, orchestrating this culinary ballet. hoping to avoid a disaster that might become tomorrow's society column fodder. Between each course, wine flows like water, which is fortunate, since actual water is rarely touched. Conversation, of course, is the true main course. Topics dance from scandal to speculation. Who's courting whom, whose stocks are soaring or plummeting, and which rival hostess overcooked her salmon last week. Stories grow taller with each glass, and compliments are handed out with the subtlety of daggers. Your dress is so daring, I wish I could pull off that colour. How clever to seat Mr. Grayson and Mrs. Blythe together. I hear their divorces are almost finalised. As the meal moves into dessert, soufflés that wobble like negotiations, fruit tarts, or perhaps flaming crepe Suzette, the champagne reaches its zenith, and so does the laughter. There's always one guest who makes a toast, and one who takes it too far, waxing poetic about friendship, jazz, or the power of indoor plumbing. Sometimes there's dancing in the parlour, or a retreat to the library for cigars and brandy, where the real secrets are shared, and tomorrow's gossip is born. By the time the party draws to a close, coats are fetched and hats adjusted. You realise your shoes are tight, your wits are blurred, and you may have promised to donate to at least 3 new causes. You say your goodbyes, air kisses, hearty handshakes, promises to do this again soon. All with the knowledge that in this glittering world, every dinner is a battle, every guest a contender, and every hangover a badge of honour. As you finally slip into your car, the city's lights spinning slightly, you vow to never eat again, at least until tomorrow night. In the world of the filthy rich, excess isn't just a privilege. It's a way of life, best enjoyed with good company, questionable decisions, and an endless supply of champagne. The party isn't over after dinner, not in 1920s New York. The real excitement begins when the polite society rituals fade and the city's forbidden heart wakes up. Welcome to the world of speakeasies, those hidden gems tucked behind unmarked doors, basement staircases, and sometimes the back of a flower shop. For the wealthy, flouting prohibition is less a crime than a competitive sport. And finding the best gin joint is as important as owning the right tuxedo. Your night begins with a whispered address, a knowing wink from your host, or perhaps a discreet card slid across the dinner table. You climb into your car, heart racing with the thrill of getting away with something, and head to a spot you'd never notice by daylight. The entrance is never obvious, a fake storefront, a heavy velvet curtain, a nondescript alley. You knock twice, say a password, which changes daily, and hope you get it right. Get it wrong, and you'll be gently turned away by a doorman built like a refrigerator in a 3-piece suit. Inside, the world transforms. The air is thick with smoke, laughter, and the unmistakable scent of forbidden liquor. Jazz spills from a tiny stage, fast and wild, as couples dance the Charleston under flickering lights. The furniture is mismatched and cozy, the walls lined with mirrors to spot unwelcome guests, namely the police. But in this secret sanctuary, everyone is someone, or pretending to be. Here, bankers rub shoulders with chorus girls, poets with prize fighters, and the only thing that matters is how well you can keep a secret. The bar itself is a miracle of ingenuity. Bootleg whiskey, bathtub gin, and French champagne smuggled in by creative means flow freely from bottles hidden under the counter. Cocktails are served in teacups or mason jars, just in case there's a raid. The bartenders are artists, shaking, stirring, and sometimes performing sleight of hand with a flask up their sleeve. No one ever asks where the liquor comes from, and everyone pretends not to see the nervous glance exchanged when a siren wails in the distance. Conversation at a speakeasy is a fast-moving current. The topics are as lively as the music, rumors about who got pinched last week, tips about the next big stock, or hushed gossip about who's having a secret romance with whom. You laugh a little louder, speak a little closer, and hope your voice is drowned out by the saxophone. If you're lucky, you might spot a celebrity or two ducking behind a curtain or leading a conga line through the crowd. No one ever remembers the details the next day. And if they do, they're smart enough to keep quiet. For all its glamour, the speakeasy life has a sharp edge. There's always the police speakeasy life, threat of a raid, a rival gang muscling in, or a reporter looking for a scoop. You learn to read the mood, to keep your head down when things turn tense, and to always have an exit strategy in mind. But these risks only add to the allure. In a city ruled by rules, breaking them together feels like true freedom. As the hour grows late and the night grows wilder, you slip back into the street, the taste of gin and adrenaline still on your tongue. The city is quiet again, but you know you've just witnessed the real Roaring Twenties. Bold, illicit, pulsing with life. Tomorrow you'll return to your penthouse and your polished manners. But tonight, you were part of a secret, rebellious world. One toast, one password, one unforgettable dance at a time. If the 1920s in New York had a soundtrack, it would be jazz, bold, unpredictable, and just a little bit scandalous. Nowhere does this music come alive quite like in the lives of the city's wealthiest night owls. After the formal dinners and secret speakeasies, the truly adventurous set their sights on the city's hottest jazz clubs, where the night is young, the rules are few, and the tempo is always set to unreasonably fast. You don't just stroll into a jazz club, you make an entrance. Your group sweeps past the velvet rope, past the crowd of hopefuls trying to bribe their way in, and into a room pulsing with energy. The band is already playing, horns and piano flying in all directions, the drumline daring you to resist tapping your feet. The lighting is soft, tinged with gold and purple, and every table is crowded with flutes of champagne, half-finished cocktails, and laughter that sparkles louder than the chandeliers overhead. The dance floor is an ecosystem all its own, and if you're not moving, you're missing out. Couples leap into the Charleston with wild abandon, sequin dresses flashing as they spin. Partners switch with dizzying speed. One moment you're in the arms of a Wall Street baron, the next, you're twirling with a Broadway ingenue who could kick higher than your social anxiety. Nobody here worries about appearances. Sweat is expected, shoes get ruined, and occasionally someone's string of pearls snaps, sending beads scattering like applause for the house band. For the rich, these clubs are more than a place to unwind. They're the heart of the social whirlwind, a nightly reset button for reputations. Maybe you made a fool of yourself at dinner. One flawless foxtrot, and it's all forgiven. Maybe a scandal is brewing in the society pages. With the right dance partner and enough jazz, no one will remember by morning. In this world, rhythm is redemption, and there is always a chance to lead, follow, or simply lose yourself in the crowd. The music never stops, and neither does the mingling. Waiters weave through the tables, balancing trays of oysters, deviled eggs, and tiny sandwiches that vanish in a single, elegant bite. Famous faces appear and disappear. A movie star in the corner, a notorious bootlegger disguised only by his charming smile, a writer furiously scribbling notes on a napkin between dance breaks. Introductions happen on the fly, names, fortunes, and backstories exchanged and forgotten with every chorus. Above all, it's the jazz that ties it all together. It's a language of its own, translating the city's chaos into sound. The best bands improvise, reading the room and matching every mood, now sultry and slow, now a hurricane of rhythm. Some dancers keep up, others do their best to fake it. but nobody's left behind. Every so often, a spontaneous dance-off erupts. A circle opens, the best dancers compete, and everyone cheers the winner, who gets nothing but glory and the right to dance with anyone they choose for the rest of the night. As the hour grows late, the club only gets hotter, the music wilder. You may leave with your hair in disarray and a shoe missing, but your spirit is lighter, your troubles forgotten, at least until the sun comes up. In these dazzling, noisy, unforgettable nights, you discover that jazz isn't just a sound, it's the pulse of the city, the background to its grandest dreams and wildest schemes. And for one glorious night, you're not just a guest, you're part of the music, part of the story, and part of what makes New York roar, no matter how meticulously the evening is planned. In the world of the 1920s elite, you can always count on one thing. By midnight, someone is going to do something spectacularly unwise. Scandal is the secret ingredient in every high society gathering, a dash of chaos that keeps the city's rumor mills running and ensures the next day's gossip columns are never empty. For the wealthy, managing scandal is less about damage control and more about spin. The art is not in avoiding disaster, but in making sure it happens to someone else. Or, if it's unavoidable, that you at least look fabulous while it unfolds. The signs are usually subtle at first. A whispered argument behind the potted palms. A flustered maid sprinting down the hallway with a tray rattling ominously. A guest disappearing for far too long, only to return with lipstick smudged, hair suspiciously tousled, and an air of defiant innocence. Perhaps it's a stockbroker loudly toasting the future right before falling into the ornamental koi pond. Or maybe a celebrated actress announcing her retirement from men just as her fiancé storms out, pursued by a photographer. Whatever the specifics, every guest becomes both spectator and potential star in the drama. The host, always watching, springs into action with practiced grace. A discreet word to the butler, a quick adjustment to the music, and the spectacle is diverted, either minimized with laughter. Oh, Roger always sings to the fish, after champagne, or maximized for effect. Did you hear what happened at the Rothschild party last month? This is nothing. The best hosts know that a little scandal keeps people coming back. The worst try to stifle it and end up the talk of the town for all the wrong reasons. The aftermath is as choreographed as the scandal itself. Staff quickly sweep away the evidence, shattered glass, wilted flowers, the remnants of an argument staged over petite fours. Guests exchange glances, sizing up who gained ground, who slipped, and who managed to skate through the night untouched. For some, scandal is an opportunity, a chance to rise above a rival, to play the wronged innocent, or to launch a fresh persona the city can't resist. For others, it's simply another Tuesday. No one escapes entirely. Even if you manage to avoid direct involvement, you're still caught up in the game of who knows what and who will tell whom. You perfect your look of shock, hand to chest, eyes wide, lips just parted, then quickly pivot to nonchalance. Well, these things do happen, don't they? You say, knowing full well you'll be recounting every detail to your closest confidant before dawn. But for all its risks, scandal is a vital social currency. It fuels the city's constant reinvention, keeps friendships crackling, and reminds everyone that for all their wealth, no one is immune to embarrassment. Tomorrow, the stories will morph and spread. The midnight swim becomes a heroic rescue, the heated argument, an impassioned debate about jazz. Some details will be forgotten, others embroidered into legend, and everyone, no matter their role, will hope that next time the spotlight lands just a little farther away. As you finally leave the party, perhaps arm in arm with your most trusted ally, perhaps alone and lost in thought, you realize that New York's richest never really sleep. They simply rest until the next midnight, the next mishap, and the next chance to prove that in the end, survival is all about style. And if you play your cards right, tomorrow's scandal might just become your ticket to social immortality. For the Brazers of Ruba, wealthy elite of 1920s, New York, love is rarely simple and never quiet. Relationships among the rich swirl with all the drama of a Broadway play. Grand gestures, public proposals, secret affairs, and the ever-present risk that the morning paper will break your news before you can even have breakfast. Marriage is an institution, but here, it's also an industry, an alliance, and sometimes just a particularly well-attended party with an unfortunate cake. It all begins with courtship, a performance in itself. Eligible bachelors and debutantes glide through a dizzying carousel of charity balls, luncheons, and weekends in Newport, each event carefully staged so that eyes can meet across crowded rooms and family fortunes can quietly size each other up. The gossip columns track every stolen glance and awkward waltz, hinting at matches months before anyone dares say the word engagement. Romantic letters are exchanged, often intercepted and read aloud by bored maids, and bouquets are delivered in a never-ending parade. Each arrangement grander than the last, each note weighed for hints of true affection or, more likely, strategic intent. When a proposal finally happens, it is public and photo-ready, often on the steps of a grand hotel or during intermission at the opera. There are tears, applause, and at least 3 society photographers lurking behind the nearest potted palm. Engagement parties follow, sometimes for weeks, with gift registries that could stock a small department store. Families beam, society congratulates itself, and already the divorce lawyers begin to clear their schedules. Weddings are colossal affairs, cathedrals decked in lilies, orchestras hidden behind hedges, cakes so tall they require architectural drawings. The guest list runs to the hundreds, and half the attendees are hoping for a glimpse of drama. An uninvited ex, a snubbed relative, or the mysterious foreign count who might be royalty, depending on the outcome of several pending lawsuits. Champagne flows, toasts ring out, and by the time the couple finally leaves in a shower of rose petals, the real speculation begins. Will it last? How long before the first headline? Because in this world, divorce is not only common, it's expected. The tabloids relish every detail, chronicling the collapse of unions with the same breathless excitement they once devoted to the courtship. Lawyers shuttle between Park Avenue and the courthouse, sorting through prenuptial agreements, contested pearls, and the custody of beloved Pekingese. Occasionally, a divorce sparks as much celebration as a wedding. Newspapers publish freedom parties, and the newly unattached are immediately recycled into the marriage market to the delight of matchmaking mothers everywhere. Yet, for all its spectacle, there is room for real feeling. Among the glittering alliances, some couples do fall truly, madly, and sometimes even quietly in love. They find moments of intimacy amid the flashbulbs, late-night walks in Central Park, whispered jokes at endless dinners, and the rare joy of laughing at the world from behind a closed door. These bonds, forged in fire and froth, sometimes outlast the parties and the headlines, remind us that, underneath it all, the heart wants what it wants, no matter how many commas are in your bank account. In 1920s New York, love is both a sport and a gamble, a game played for high stakes in the full glare of society's spotlight. Whether you're a newlywed, a seasoned heartbreaker, or somewhere in between, one thing is certain. You can't hide from the city's eyes, and you can't predict the next twist in the romance roulette. All you can do is place your bets, hold on tight, and dance until the music stops, if it ever does. Behind every perfectly polished banister, and silver-laden table in a 1920s New York mansion lies an invisible engine, the staff. While the rich glide from one dazzling event to the next, it's the butlers, maids, cooks, chauffeurs, and footmen who make the whole charade possible. For the wealthy, the help is as essential as running water, expected, largely unnoticed, and called upon only when something goes spectacularly wrong. But peel back the velvet curtain, and you'll find a world with its own hierarchies, drama, and ambitions, a parallel society hidden in plain sight. Each grand house operates with military precision. At the top is the butler, the undisputed general. He keeps track of everything: guest lists, liquor inventory, and the whereabouts of the family's least favorite aunt. The butler knows everyone's secrets, and his silence is worth its weight in gold. Beneath him is the housekeeper, the quiet commander of the maids, orchestrating an army of dusters and ironers, each with their own turf wars over broom closets and linens. The kitchen is a world unto itself, ruled by the chef, a culinary genius whose temper is as famous as their soufflés. The cook's assistants, scullery maids, and the occasional terrified delivery boy live in awe and fear of the chef's rolling pin, while society guests praise the delicate hint of tarragon in their soup. The staff knows the real secret ingredient: last-minute panic and a bit of shouted French. The footmen and maids move silently through the halls, expert in the art of being both invisible and omnipresent. They set tables with the precision of surgeons, and can carry a silver tray through a crowd without ever breaking eye contact. The ladies' maid and valet have the most intimate jobs: buttoning gowns, tying ties, listening to whispered complaints, and gently steering their employers away from disastrous fashion choices. Often they know more about their charges' marriages than the couples do themselves. Chauffeurs, meanwhile, have a unique vantage point. They're privy to the private arguments and the late-night confessions that happen in the back seat. They know which family members drink a little too much at lunch, who secretly visits the speakeasies, and exactly how many bribes it takes to keep a parking ticket from ever reaching the master's eyes. Downstairs, away from the marble and mahogany, the staff has their own society. There are romances, sometimes secret, sometimes the worst-kept secret in the house. There are rivalries: whose silver is shiniest, who received the biggest Christmas tip, who knows how to fix the phonograph when it starts playing Sousa marches at midnight. Gossip moves faster than the dumbwaiter, and everyone knows that what happens above stairs is only half the story. Occasionally, a staff member is promoted up to a larger house, or even to the mysterious position of trusted family retainer, but most remain in their roles, each with their own code of loyalty, pride, and discretion. Every once in a while, the boundary between upstairs and downstairs blurs. A grateful employer rewards a lifetime of service with a bequest or a glowing letter of reference. More often, the staff gets paid for their silence, their skill, and their ability to smooth over disasters before the guests ever notice. For the help, the greatest accomplishment is to keep the household running so perfectly that the family never has to think about how it all happens. So as you marvel at the opulence and ease of the 1920s elite, remember, behind every sparkling chandelier is a tired maid with a dust rag, and behind every poised hostess is a cook with a headache. The help may be out of sight, but in this world, they're never truly out of mind or out of earshot. If you thought the extravagance of 1920s New York high society stopped at marble bathrooms and gold-plated caviar spoons, think again. For the wealthy, pets are the ultimate accessory, living, breathing status symbols that add a little chaos and a lot of conversation to every party. Sure, everyone has a dog, but only the truly audacious dare to turn their penthouse into a menagerie. Because when you have everything money can buy, why not try your hand at domesticating a peacock or, if you're feeling adventurous, a baby alligator? Lapdogs are the foundation, of course. Poodles clipped to perfection, silky-haired spaniels carried in monogrammed purses, and terriers that bark with the confidence of a man who's never worked a day in his life. These pampered pups enjoy lives more comfortable than most humans. Sleeping on velvet cushions, eating hand-fed roast chicken, and sporting collars that sparkle with real gemstones. The family dog isn't just a pet. He's practically a member of the guest list, complete with his own Christmas stocking and, if the papers are to be believed, a personal feud with the neighbour's equally spoiled bulldog. But for the socialite who finds dogs a bit too ordinary, there are cats. Not the average alley cats, of course, but pedigreed Persians and Siamese, with attitudes sharper than their claws. They slink through parlours like tiny aristocrats, shedding on the finest upholstery and demanding milk served at precisely the right temperature. Rumour has it one heiress spent a small fortune importing rare blue cream kittens from England, just to upstage her rival's collection of exotic birds. Birds, in fact, are an entire subculture among the upper crust. Parrots that quote Shakespeare, canaries that trill the latest jazz hits, and peacocks whose tail feathers occasionally cause traffic jams on the roof garden. Their cages are works of art, perched in sunlit windows, so every guest can admire the household's feathered investment. If you're particularly bold, or just a little eccentric, you might even parade a peacock down Fifth Avenue, because nothing says good morning like being followed by a trail of iridescent feathers. Then there are the true statement pets, the kind that make even the old money set raise an eyebrow. There are rumours of Wall Street barons keeping pet monkeys, dressed in tiny suits and trained to tip their hats. One famous hostess allegedly introduced a baby lion cub at her birthday party, to mixed reviews and one panicked florist. And let's not forget the occasional alligator in the sunroom, a fad imported from Florida by someone who had simply run out of things to impress their friends. Of course, owning an exotic animal requires a small army of staff. Maids sigh as they chase parrots from the curtains. Butlers offer calm reassurance to nervous guests. No, madam, the snake is not venomous. And veterinarians are on speed dial. There's always the risk of mayhem. A chewed slipper here, a shredded tapestry there. But it's a small price to pay for social distinction. Besides, in a city where everyone is vying for attention, nothing guarantees a second look quite like a monkey riding shotgun in your touring car. For the rich of the 1920s, pets aren't just companions, they're characters in the ongoing drama of high society. Each animal has a story, a scandal, or at least a rumor attached. And while fashions come and go, the sight of a bejeweled lapdog or a peacock on the terrace remains one of the surest signs that in New York's highest circles, life is never, ever boring, even if your shoes are occasionally covered in feathers. In the glamorous chaos of 1920s, New York, being rich is never quite enough. The real game is staying richer, or at least appearing richer, than everyone else. Enter the Vanderbilts, the gold standard of opulence, the yardstick against which every mansion, party, and yacht is measured. To keep up with the Vanderbilts is not a casual phrase. It's a way of life, an unofficial sport that leaves fortunes and friendships in its glittering wake. Every day is an unspoken contest. You wake up in your penthouse, glance across at the neighboring rooftop, and notice the Vanderbilts have installed a rooftop tennis court overnight. By lunchtime, your own architect is on the phone, quietly sketching plans for a rooftop swimming pool, heated, of course, and large enough to host the entire New York Philharmonic, if it comes to that. One-upmanship is a daily necessity, and the city's architects, florists, and jewelers are locked in a perpetual arms race. The parties are perhaps the most public battleground. If the Vanderbilts hosted a masquerade last Saturday with a live jazz orchestra and waiters dressed as Greek gods, then your next soiree must include a real waterfall, a famous opera singer, and enough champagne to float a small steamboat. Invitations are scrutinized for originality and extravagance. Will there be caviar? Someone whispers. I heard the flowers will be flown in from France. Hushed envy or open admiration, it hardly matters, as long as you're the talk of the town. Real estate, too, becomes a theatre of rivalry. The Vanderbilts build a new mansion on Fifth Avenue with marble imported from Italy. Naturally, you expand your own residence with a ballroom whose parquet floors require daily buffing by a team of acrobatic butlers. Summer homes in Newport, winter chalets in Lake Placid, private train cars lined in silk. There's always a new frontier to conquer, a fresh headline to make, a more exclusive address to claim. Then there's the matter of the family jewels. At any society function, the race is on to wear the longest strand of pearls, the most dazzling tiara, or a brooch so heavy it requires its own security guard. One hostess appears with a diamond necklace rumored to be a gift from a Maharaja. The next arrives dripping in emeralds, forcing everyone else to reevaluate their entire jewelry collection over dessert. If you're truly committed, you find yourself ordering rare gemstones by telegram, hoping to stay ahead of the ever-turning wheel of excess. Of course, all this competitive grandeur comes at a cost. Bankers wring their hands, husbands lose sleep, and the staff spends their days and nights inventing new ways to outshine the proud neighbors. Children grow up knowing their future happiness hinges on the ability to make an entrance, or at least to avoid tripping over their mother's new sable rug. For the social climbers on the outside looking in, the pressure to keep up creates an entire industry of tutors, trainers, etiquette experts, and professional party planners. Yet for all the exhaustion, there's a giddy thrill in the chase. New York in the 1920s is alive with ambition, ego, and imagination. The city's richest families don't just shape their own lives, they set the tone for an era, a roaring, restless, relentlessly sparkling age. When you keep up with the Vanderbilts, you're not just chasing a name, you're joining in the great, extravagant dance that makes history worth reading, and sometimes worth envying, even if you're out of breath by the end of the song. For every shimmering night spent dining, dancing, and carousing across New York's ritziest salons, there is a morning after, and for the filthy rich of the 1920s, even a hangover comes with its own elaborate set of rituals. Forget soldiering through with black coffee and regret. Here, the cure for last night's excesses is itself an art form, choreographed with almost as much care as the party that caused it. If you're going to suffer, you might as well do it with style. Your morning begins in a haze, sunlight filtered through heavy curtains drawn tight by a merciful maid. The first sensation is not the headache, but the scent of strong coffee wafting in from the corridor, a promise that salvation is near. The staff moves quietly, voices hushed, footsteps soft. They know the drill: never clatter a teacup, never open the curtains too wide, and always have a tray of remedies within arm's reach before you dare attempt to sit up. The butler arrives with the day's first offering, a silver tray, laden with all the essential supplies. There's the aforementioned coffee, as black as midnight and twice as necessary, along with a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice and a pitcher of water. Alongside these sit delicate slices of buttered toast, a boiled egg, gently seasoned, nothing aggressive, and, if you're lucky, a dish of the chef's infamous hangover eggs, a creamy concoction believed to contain both science and a little bit of hope. Next comes the restorative remedies. a tiny vial of Reviver tonic, ordered from a discreet apothecary, rumoured to contain a cocktail of ginger, bitters, and something no one will name. There's a cold compress for your forehead, cucumber slices for your eyes, and a small bowl of smelling salts, just in case. Some swear by a brisk walk around the roof garden. Others prefer to soak in a hot bath scented with eucalyptus or lavender. If you're especially fortunate, your masseuse is on call, ready to knead away both the tension in your shoulders and the lingering memory of too many gin fizzes. Breakfast is a balancing act. The cook knows today is not the day for oysters or caviar. Instead, you're served oatmeal, bland and soothing, with a drizzle of honey and a whisper of lemon zest. The newspapers are delivered, ironed as always, but you read with caution, bracing for mention of any regrettable escapades from the night before. Did you really challenge the mayor to a Charleston contest? Did your cousin's monkey actually escape and terrorize the dessert table? Only the society columns and a slightly smug valet can confirm. Throughout the morning, the staff deploys their secret weapon: discretion. No one mentions the feather boa tangled in the chandelier or the missing shoe found in the punch bowl. Instead, they refill your water, refresh your cool cloth, and offer gentle encouragement as you attempt the monumental task of standing upright. The telephone is held at bay. No calls until at least noon, and only after you've had a second coffee. By midday, you begin to feel human again. Perhaps you manage a stroll in the drawing room, or brave a ride in the elevator down to lunch. The day moves at a gentle pace, each indulgence forgiven as long as you're ready to repeat the cycle the next evening. In the world of the 1920s elite, hangovers aren't just endured, they're pampered, managed, and even, in their own odd way, celebrated. After all, what's a little suffering compared to a night of unforgettable excess? You may not remember every detail, but with a staff like this, you'll always recover in style, ready for the next round, whatever it may bring. After the last party has fizzled out, after the jazz clubs and the speakeasies have closed their hidden doors, a strange quiet settles over even the most extravagant penthouses. In the hush that follows a day and night of dazzling excess, you finally confront the only thing that can't be bought or borrowed in 1920s New York: peace of mind. The roaring 20s may have been loud, but beneath the roar there is always silence. And for the city's richest, it can be the strangest luxury of all. It's midnight, maybe later, and you find yourself alone in your cavernous bedroom, the windows framing the city lights like a necklace of diamonds thrown across velvet. Outside, the taxis still honk, the city still thrums, but in your private world, the echoes fade. The silk sheets are impossibly soft, the pillows fluffed by hands you'll never see. You can have caviar for a midnight snack, a glass of champagne just by ringing a bell. But suddenly, all the comforts seem quieter, even weightless. There's a loneliness that sometimes seeps into these grand rooms. No matter how many friends or lovers pass through earlier, your phone is silent, the champagne flat. You replay the night's laughter, the witty banter, the bold declarations of love and rivalry, and wonder which moments were real and which were just another scene in the endless performance of high society. Was the admiration genuine or just good manners? Was the dance an escape or simply routine? These are questions no amount of money can answer. The staff, ever attentive, move like ghosts, tucking you in and drawing the curtains. The city's hum recedes. In this quiet, you're left with your own thoughts, hopes and regrets, dreams and doubts. For all the glimmering distraction, there are worries no one else can carry. The uncertain fortunes of the stock market, the shifting sands of friendships and alliances, the aches of love, lost and found. Even the grandest homes cannot keep out the small anxieties that come knocking at night. You think of those who are sleeping below the skyline, clerks and waitresses, musicians and bellhops, dreaming of fortunes and futures, perhaps envying your view. Yet you, from your high vantage, sometimes envy their simplicity, their privacy, their freedom from endless scrutiny. The gilded cage may be lined with velvet, but it is a cage all the same. For some, sleep comes quickly, a practiced escape from the pressures of appearances. For others, it is elusive. You may toss and turn, listening to the tick of a jeweled clock, replaying every awkward conversation or misstep, wondering if tomorrow's papers will mention your name, and in what context. No servant can ease this restlessness. No featherbed soften the pang of uncertainty. This, too, is the reality of luxury. But, eventually, exhaustion wins. The city that never sleeps finally slows, and so do you. In this rare golden silence, you remember that behind every fortune is a human heart, still beating, still yearning for belonging and rest. Tomorrow the music will start again. The game will resume, and you'll rejoin the sparkling throng, refreshed, dressed, and ready to play your part. But tonight, in this hush, you find the tiniest comfort. Even the richest lives are marked by the same longing for peace, for connection, for a good night's sleep. And in that, you are not so different from anyone else at all. If you think New York's elite were content to just show off their wealth in public, think again. The truly rich of the 1920s loved nothing more than keeping a few secrets, especially when those secrets were literally built into their homes. Forget simple closets and pantries. The grandest townhouses and penthouses boasted labyrinths of secret passageways, hidden doors, and mysterious rooms, all designed to keep the rest of the world guessing. Sometimes these secret spaces were practical, but more often they were just another way to say, "I'm richer and sneakier than you'll ever be." It usually started with the blueprints. When you hired an architect in this era, you didn't just ask for a little extra closet space. You requested a reading room concealed behind a rotating bookshelf, or a gentleman's lounge, accessible only by pulling the right candlestick. It wasn't uncommon for a master suite to connect, via hidden corridor, to a private study or a rooftop garden, perfect for midnight escapes or discreet rendezvous. For the cost of a small fortune, you could turn your entire home into a puzzle box. Why all the secrecy? In some cases, it was about safety. Prohibition meant every respectable household needed a place to stash the forbidden hooch. And what better than a bar behind a sliding panel in the library? More than one speakeasy was hidden inside a private residence, complete with a soundproof jazz room and a quick exit should the police come knocking. For others, it was about privacy. When you lived in a world of constant attention, there was a strange luxury in knowing there was a space only you, and maybe your most trusted butler, could find. But for most, secret rooms were simply fun. Parties took on an extra thrill when a host suddenly disappeared, only to reappear from behind a false wall, leading guests on a whispered tour of their hidden billiard room or Egyptian lounge. Children grew up with tales of ghosts in the attic, only to discover trapdoors and stairways, spiraling up to forgotten turrets. Rival socialites tried to outdo each other, not just with jewels or pearls, but with the most ingenious and outlandish household mysteries. Did you hear the Hamiltons have a swimming pool hidden beneath their ballroom? That's nothing, darling. The Winthrops have an entire secret apartment for their dog. Staff, of course, were in on the act. Maids and valets memorized every secret lever and code, trained to slip through the walls like household phantoms. never startling a guest or spilling the secret. The butler knew where the emergency staircases led, and which portraits concealed the best hiding spots for expensive whiskey, or, occasionally, the odd relative in need of a discreet nap. Sometimes, secret rooms had darker purposes, vaults for jewels, private galleries for art that might not quite be legal, or hideaways for the occasional family scandal. One could never be too careful, especially when your neighbor's favorite sport was keeping tabs on your comings and goings. If a particularly sensitive guest found themselves in an awkward situation, a good host could usher them away, unseen, while the party continued in blissful ignorance. In the end, these hidden passages and rooms were the ultimate symbol of 1920s wealth. Not just opulent, but exclusive. They promised the thrill of the unknown, the luxury of privacy, and a touch of childish delight in a world that otherwise demanded constant performance. To have a secret room was to possess a small slice of freedom in a city, and a society that never really let you disappear. And if anyone ever found your hidden door, well, that just meant the next one had to be even better concealed. In 1920s New York, you didn't go to the doctor came to you. For the city's wealthiest, healthcare was not about waiting in line or leafing through dog-eared magazines in a crowded lobby. It was about velvet, settees, bedside visits, and medical attention delivered with all the style and discretion of a private banker. The house call wasn't just a service, it was an event, part science, part spectacle, and entirely reserved for those with the right connections and the right-sized bank account. Your morning might begin with a discreet tap at your bedroom door. The family physician arrives, hat in hand, bag bulging with glass vials, patent medicines, and enough bandages to mummify a debutante. He is ushered into your private sitting room by the butler, who offers tea while you're fetched from your silken sheets. No one panics, household staff are used to the doctor's presence. Whether it's the aftermath of a particularly ambitious dinner party, a nervous complaint, or just a fashionable bout of ennui, the good doctor is on call. A house call in this era is a performance. The doctor checks your pulse, examines your tongue, and asks after your appetite, all while chatting amiably about the weather and last night's gala. If you're feeling faint, a nurse is on hand with smelling salts and a cold compress. Need a tonic for your nerves? He's got a dozen. Some are secret blends of herbs and roots, others laced with a bit more spirit than the label admits. Your prescribed rest, perhaps a little sunlight, maybe a new hat. For the truly frazzled, a week at a health spa in Saratoga Springs is recommended. Doctor's orders, and who are you to argue? Of course, not all treatments are quite so gentle. The 1920s doctor is part old-fashioned healer, part early adopter of modern marvels, X-rays, newfangled blood tests, and even the occasional experimental therapy, radium water, anyone, are all the rage. Injections are delivered with drama, bandages are wrapped with precision, and prescriptions are written in a hand so elegant you're tempted to frame them. If a new medicine is sweeping Europe, your doctor will secure it, whether it works or not. Some of the treatments would horrify your modern self. Mercury for a sore throat, opium drops for a cough, or, should things get truly dire, a brisk round of leeches to balance the humours. You don't question it. If your neighbour's daughter came back from the sanatorium completely transformed, you nod in admiration, not skepticism. Trust in the physician is absolute, especially when he arrives in a chauffeured car and knows which side of your family has a tendency toward the vapours. Children receive their own rituals. The pediatrician is practically a family friend, dispensing sugar cubes laced with medicine and gentle advice to mothers fretting over colds, tantrums, or picky appetites. Vaccinations, if available, are delivered with a smile and a toy, followed by a reassuring pat on the head and a stern word about avoiding drafty hallways. Through it all, the house call doctor is as much a keeper of secrets as the butler. He knows who had too much champagne, who needs a little extra pick-me-up, and who should be excused from society for a spell. And above all, he never talks. At least, not to the wrong people. In the end, health among the elite is managed with style, privacy, and just enough snake oil to keep things interesting. When you're wealthy, even getting sick is an occasion, one best managed from the comfort of your own bed, with the doctor only a bell ring away. In the rarefied air of 1920s New York, being a child of the filthy rich wasn't all nursery rhymes and skipping ropes. It was a full-time occupation. These were no ordinary kids. They were little lords and ladies, miniature models of their parents with their own tutors, routines, and a wardrobe that could humble a Parisian couturier. Their lives were so regimented and luxurious that a simple game of hide-and-seek could easily turn into a game of try not to be found by the governess before tea. The day began with a gentle wake-up call from the nanny, who entered with a tray of cocoa or warm milk, never too hot, never too cold. The children's rooms, far from being just play spaces, were grand suites filled with storybooks, hand-painted toys, and imported rugs. Walls were decorated with whimsical murals, often more valuable than the actual art in most museums. Stuffed animals lined the beds, all custom-made, because naturally Teddy was hand-stitched by a craftsman in Vienna. Education was serious business. While the city's less fortunate kids hurried off to crowded public schools, these young aristocrats were taught at home by imported governesses and multilingual tutors, French lessons before breakfast, fencing or piano by 10, elocution and deportment classes to ensure they could one day host a charity gala without dropping a fork. The pressure to excel was real. Parents expected their offspring to recite poetry, play Chopin, and speak politely to the visiting ambassador, all before lunch. There was always at least one child who, by age 6, could already hold their own in a heated discussion about the gold standard. Playtime, though, was something out of a storybook. Forget stickball in the alley. The penthouse garden was transformed into a miniature Versailles for afternoon games, and no birthday party was complete without a pony ride, sometimes indoors. Magicians, balloon sculptors, and entire troops of actors were brought in to ensure no child ever experienced boredom, or, heaven forbid, interacted with ordinary kids. Parties included elaborate treasure hunts, mountains of confections, and a guest list that read like a junior version of the social register. The fashion was equally absurd. Girls wore frocks with hand-embroidered flowers, boys donned sailor suits or miniature tuxedos, and everyone had at least 2 changes of clothes per day. One for lessons, one for tea, and sometimes a third for when the photographer arrives. Shoes were custom-fitted and sometimes matched to the family dog's collar, because appearances matter, even for the under 10 crowd. Despite the splendor, childhood at the top wasn't entirely carefree. There were rules, expectations, and a constant parade of adults monitoring every move. The wrong remark at the dinner table could earn a lecture, the wrong friend, a quiet word to the parents. Letters home from summer camps in the Adirondacks were inspected for proper grammar. But there were also quiet moments. Reading by the window, feeding the pigeons in Central Park, giggling at the kitchen staff's secret jokes, or plotting harmless mischief in the hallways. For all their privilege, these children grew up knowing their futures were mapped out: prep school, debutante balls, strategic marriages, a carefully cultivated spot in the family business. Their world was plush, but padded with expectations. And yet, just like any children, They sometimes dreamed of simpler adventures, away from velvet ropes and silver spoons. Proof that, in any era, a little mischief is the true language of youth. For the 1920s rich, being ahead of the curve didn't just mean owning the latest Parisian fashions or throwing the wildest parties. It meant transforming your home into a living, buzzing showcase of every newfangled convenience money could buy. This was the age when modern meant miraculous. And if a gadget could be plugged in, wound up, or cranked by a man in uniform, you simply had to have it. Step inside a well-heeled Manhattan penthouse, and you'll